Hi, welcome back to Space Thoughts. It's been a while since I sat down and actually did a video here, so I thought today was really a good day to get caught up a little bit on what's going on. And thinking about what I wanted to talk about, I think I want to go back into this idea of norms and rules, what have you, especially because we've been seeing it a lot in the context of what's going on with the the open working group with to try and develop this idea of norms with this ASAT testing ban, this moratorium that they're trying to create a norm out of. And most recently was this idea what happened with the PRC space station, particularly the Long March 5B booster that put it into orbit. Essentially, it was careening around orbit with no real set control of where it was going to re-enter. Now, this last one did re-enter into the ocean, but it generated a lot of concern, a lot of people coming out and yelling about, well, we need standards. There's got to be, there's got to be responsibilities with these types of activities. That the PRC can't just launch these things and let them land wherever. They got to take some responsibility for it. And it all goes back to the idea, just hammering on the idea, we need norms, we need norms, we need norms. I know the NASA administrator got out and basically was finger wagging again. Again, from a political standpoint, you probably need to do that. But the question is, how effective is this really? And norms have really been pushed a lot since this administration began about 20 odd months ago as really the forefront of outer space security. This is how we're going to deal with counter space weapons, making space a peaceful domain, what have you. But it really lacks a lot, and it's kind of short sighted. And I've talked about this before. I think really the track we're on is really a train wreck. So I mean, especially when you're talking about the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. I mean, look what's going on with the Russian Federation and Ukraine, and really and to be blunt, I mean, there's basically atrocities. Any conventional rules or norms of civilized warfare, if you can call warfare civilized, it's pretty much been thrown out the window, and it's a free for all. So, my problem is that we there is a thought right now that we can get the PRC and the Russians to sign on to norms in outer space. They'll agree to that because it's outer space, but really it's not as easy as that. And in my opinion, it's a fact we can create all these norms and things, but what are we really accomplishing? Well, it makes for good political optics. You're saying, well, where we're taking quote the leadership role in outer space norms and creating rules of the road, what have you. But the PRC and the Russian Federation in particular are looking at it and saying, so what? Now, and this all gets back into the idea of great power competition and such. This idea that basically there are different worldviews, and the Russians and the Chinese have their own ideas of what the world should look like and what the rules should be. So my big thing, with what's going on with the Chinese boosters, careening around in orbit before they splash down or re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, whether it comes to the development of counter space weapons and what's going to actually happen in outer space, I think the whole idea is we can't be reliant on this idea and norms. And really, in my perception, it really exudes weakness because the whole idea around norms is this is deterrence. And I'm kind of, look back at, you read things like Clausewitz and, look at other ideas of what deterrence is all about. And it really, really isn't. And unfortunately, right now, the US is on a track in particular with the rest of the West saying, trying to soft pedal this whole idea of, space is a warfighting domain. In fact, the new national, basically a new national posture, what have you, is actually taking a step back from the idea that space is a warfighting domain and it's now an operational domain. And the idea is, well, we can create all these norms and everything will be all right. It'll deter the Chinese and the Russians from using these counter space weapons. My perception is, and if you listen to my videos, if you read my briefing letter, you'll basically understand that I think that is really baloney. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I think they'll look at us making all these norms and all these rules, and they'll say that's great. Now we'll know to what extent they are willing to go and how far we can push and how we can actually trap them in their own words. For us, it's basically a free for all. We'll do whatever we need to get done. And of course, I've talked a lot about lawfare and continue to talk a lot about lawfare. And I think that is basically the whole idea is, they'll put these rules out. We might give them some lip service, But in the end, if they're going to basically, if there's an advantage in breaking the rules, we'll break them. So the point is really the idea of rules, norms, what have you, isn't deterrence. It isn't going to deter an adversary, especially in great power competition, especially where they have different ideas of what the rules would be. And I made a comment about this about a week or so ago on a social media post. Is basically, look, the people who make the rules are the ones who are standing down. In other words, if you get knocked on your butt, you're not in a position to tell people what the rules are. It's usually the person who's standing up and looking over you after they've knocked you down that basically can tell you, okay, this is what really the rules are. And again, this goes back to the whole idea of having rules is nice, but also but there's also a reality that supersedes ideology and says, look, rules are good, but they're not the answer. You got to have capabilities. You got to have defensive capabilities. And of course, we have this thing called resilience, which is a fancy buzzword for something that I think is we're basically in a lack of a better word, untenable position where we're falling back on the idea, well, we can keep on taking hits and this idea of resilience will save the day. I'm not so sure about that, but you also got to have offensive capabilities, what, and the cuss word is ASATs. That is a bad word to talk about, and people don't like talking about, especially in this era of sustainability, whatever sustainability means, and space environmentalism. It's all about the environment and not the operational theater itself and how you depend on that. So, I mean, the whole point is if we're too dependent on rules and dependent on them to prevent an attack or to defend against attack, along with resilience, I think we're really going to be in trouble, especially, something happens in Taiwan or what have you. They're going, they can basically, they have the capabilities right now, the PRC and the Russian Federation, to really knock us on our butts in terms of our satellite systems. And that includes commercial systems. And there's been a lot of talk about that and concern about that as well, that these systems are welcome to that. And of course, the Russians have been making a lot of noise about it, which now when the Russians are making noise about it, I said, okay, but when they stop making noise about it, then I worry about it a little bit more. And so suffice it to say, having rules is good. Being the good guy is good. But sometimes to be the good guy, you gotta be able to, be the bad guy a little bit. In other words, saying, look, this is basically we want to get along, we want things to work out nicely for space. But if you press the issue, there will be consequences. And I think that kind of circles back to this whole Long March 5B situation. They've done it 4 or 5 times already, and I think they're going to at least do it one more time to launch their telescope into orbit that's going to sit by the space station. But the whole idea is you can wag your fingers all you want at the Russians, at the PRC, and they don't care. And people say, well, they must care. I said, no. In the grander scheme of things, they don't care. They don't care about this idea of sustainability. They don't care about preserving the outer space environment. They care about winning. And of course, we get back to this idea. Well, I've heard certain multiple leaders say, well, there are no winners in a war in space. I disagree, because it really all depends on how you define winning. And I think our friends in Beijing and Moscow have different ideas of what a win condition looks like, and such, and would be willing to take measures, especially if the U.S. doesn't believe in that, to actually, see if they could win. In other words, winning is usually defined by the person looking to win, as opposed to the person trying to not stop a fight, or stop a contest to begin with. So again, I think this whole idea of norms, rules, codes of conduct, what have you, it's really superfluous. I mean, it gets down to there is really in international law, there's no referee to throw a penalty, throw a flag and issue a penalty if the other sides break the rules. And what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and look at the rule book and say, hey, they broke the rules while they're chewing down your satellite systems? So I think what needs to be done, and again, this is just a subject matter expert talking without knowledge of more probably intimate details of what's going on, but you need to have sanctions. For example, with the Long March 5B boosters, instead of just wagging your fingers about how they need to be apply, basically comply or recognize certain responsible behaviors in outer space, you also got to go to them behind the scene and diplomatic and say, look, you can do this all you want, great, but if one of those boosters lands in our territory, in our sovereign territory, we will full court press pursue all our legal remedies under international law. And here's where Congress get involved too, because Congress could actually pass laws to actually, help enforce sanctions against these players. I go back to back in the 70s. I think it was 79. Cosmos 954, which is the Russian Rorset, deorbited, and a lot of the debris fell in the Canadian Northwest, and it caused a big mess with all the radioactive material from the reactor. And there was a big hullabaloo. I mean, you had these two treaties, the Registration Convention and Liability Convention, and there was a back and forth with between the two embassies, the Canadian embassy and the Soviet embassy, about whether or not this satellite actually belonged to them, and the Soviets basically denied it. No, it's ours, until they actually came up with a piece that they were able to identify that it is Soviets. And once they identified that, they had to get the Soviets to admit liability under the Liability Convention. And by then they actually came to an agreement on I forget what the amount was, but from what I understand, only a fraction of that was ever paid by the Soviet Union. So to enforce international law, they might have things like the Liability Convention, or the damage from a booster that comes tumbling down. Congress might actually get in the game and actually develop some domestic enforcement mechanisms that tag onto onto these international treaties to help to create rights of suit or standing in say private citizens, or give the government authority to say go pursue certain actions to actually collect on these awards and stuff. So fundamentally, the idea is you can wag your fingers all you want, but the PRC and the Russian Federation in particular, they don't care. I mean, it's nothing to them. And great, we can make a great, it makes a great propaganda coup on our part, but does it really do anything? You got to have enforcement. And there really aren't any enforcement mechanisms in the UN aside from political, which the Russians and the Chinese really don't care about. You can develop things at home domestically to actually help maybe push that a little bit. And I think it's important to have some sort of backup, in at least on the sidelines in the back rooms, basically saying that hey, if X, Y, and Z happens because of these boosters tumbling, or if you do damage to our satellites, we're going to take some domestic action on our own and actually collect damages. Again, well, I say lawyers are America's secret weapon, and they are, because there's so many of us, and we are a very litigious society. We should turn that to our advantage, and use lawfare to our advantage. I mean, we've done it before with foreign entities. There's no reason we can't do it now to help enforce, say, not so much enforce compliance, but punish or actually have punitive measures, punitive sanctions for irresponsible behavior. Say one of those 5B boosters comes down in the U.S. someplace and causes some damage, and such. Because when it happens, the Chinese aren't going to be immediately all making up for it. They're going to deny it left and right and do it. I know I'm sounding nationalistic here. Well, I'm sorry. I'm just calling it like I see it, taking a realistic view as opposed to an idealistic view. And that goes for all these, this whole idea of norms. I think it's very idealistic, and I really don't think it faces reality. And really, it smacks of desperation on our part in terms of outer space security. So I'm going to be pushing a lot of that idea this year. I know the next issue of my briefing letter, the Pressy, is basically that's basically going to be the theme of that, I think, on this idea of norms and rules. The Pressy, if you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to become a subscriber. You can go to www.thepressy.net. I will send you a free copy if you want to look at it, of the prior issue, probably this issue right here that's on the screen. And if you want to become a subscriber, I have credit card options and I have PayPal options in order to do it, and multiple layers. If you're a government employee, military, even if you're retired, I have about a 25% discount. Academia as well, for faculty, I have a discount as well. So you can go to my website, www.spacelawsolutions.com, or www.thepressy.net, and they'll take you directly to the page of my briefing letter to talk about it. And I encourage you to become a subscriber. The next issue will be coming out on around December 15th, I believe. It's the third. It's going to be actually the second Friday in the month of December, as opposed to the third, just because of the holidays. But anyways, that's all I have right now. Again, I'm going to try and do some more of these before the end of the year. Again, can't believe how fast 2022 has gone by, but I want to maybe do a few more of these, maybe one or two, and I'll try and keep this up to date a little bit more. Until then, like, share, subscribe, as I showed you up here on the screen, and I hope you're safe, hope you're healthy. Happy spring to our people down on the southern end of the equator, and we're entering winter pretty quick here in the northern hemisphere. So again, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll talk to you next time.